My name is Daphne Ingram. I am 68 years old, and 3 days after I buried my husband, my son called me crying. It started at the funeral. My daughter stood beside me at the reception hall, pointed at the garment bag draped over my arm, and said 5 words that still echo in my skull. "It's just cluttering the closet, Mom." My husband had been in the ground for 4 hours. His brown suit, the one he wore to our wedding proposal, to our children's graduations, to every moment that mattered. And she wanted it in a donation bin before the flowers on his casket had wilted. I folded it, I walked to my car, I set it on the passenger seat. I said nothing. But here is what none of them knew, what even I did not know yet. Frank had spent his last weeks turning that old brown suit into something none of us expected. What my son found sewn into the lining changed everything. And I do not mean just the suit. Welcome back to Mom's Sweet Revenge, where mothers stand tall, set boundaries, and let the truth do the talking. If you are new here, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. Now, to understand how a brown suit saved my life, I need to take you back 18 months. Frank and I were married 43 years. He was a mechanical engineer at a firm in Albany. I was an ER nurse at Millbrook General. 35 years, 12-hour shifts, every holiday you can name. We met at a diner in 1981 when he spilled coffee on my crossword puzzle and offered to buy me a new newspaper. I told him to buy me breakfast instead. He did. Then he bought me breakfast every Saturday for the next 4 decades. Our home was a modest colonial on Birch Lane in Millbrook, New York. White shutters. A back deck Frank built himself over 2 summers. We paid off the mortgage in 2011. It was worth about $480,000. Then there was the lake house. Frank's father built the original cabin in the Catskills back in 1962. 1 room, a wood stove, a dock that leaned. Frank expanded it over the years, added 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, insulation. By last year, it was appraised at $720,000. Between both properties, the family estate sat at roughly $1.2 million. We were never flashy people. We saved. We did not owe. Frank put my name first on every account. He checked the tire pressure on my car before every night shift. That was his version of saying, "I love you" 12 times a day. But in his last months, Frank started acting strangely. He called the bank twice in 1 week. He asked his old friend Roy Beckett, a retired tailor, to visit him at hospice. They talked behind a closed door for over an hour. When I asked what they discussed, Frank patted my hand and said, "Just tying up loose ends, Daff." I thought it was the medication. Let me tell you about the suit. Frank bought it in 1986 from a shop on State Street in Albany that has been gone for 20 years now. Harris tweed, brown herringbone, 2-button front. The kind of suit a man buys once and wears to everything that matters. He wore it the night he proposed. November 14th, 1982. Wait, no, he bought it later. Let me correct that. He proposed in a borrowed blazer. But the brown suit was what he wore to our daughter Kristen's high school graduation, to our son Caleb's college commencement, to the hospital ceremony where I received my 25-year nursing pin, to his own retirement dinner where he gave a 3-minute speech and choked up exactly once at the words, "My wife made all of it possible." The elbows had been patched twice, the buttons replaced once. The lining, as far as I knew, that was original. That suit smelled like cedar and Old Spice, and 43 years of a man who kept his promises. When Frank went into hospice, the suit stayed in our bedroom closet. I would brush the sleeve with my fingertips every time I walked past, the way you might touch a wall to make sure the house is still standing. I mentioned Roy Beckett visiting. Roy was 74, a retired tailor who had altered every suit Frank ever owned. He showed up at the hospice one Tuesday afternoon with a small leather kit. They closed the curtain around Frank's bed and talked for over an hour. When Roy left, he nodded at me, patted my shoulder, and said, "Your husband's a good man, Daphne." I assumed Frank was being sentimental, a dying man sorting memories with an old friend. I was wrong about that. After Frank's diagnosis, stage 4 pancreatic, 18 months if we were lucky. Our daughter Kristen stepped in. She was 41, married to Todd Pryor, living in a 4-bedroom colonial on the other side of town that was bigger than anything she could comfortably afford. "Mom, you have enough on your plate. Let me handle the paperwork." It sounded reasonable. I was spending 14 hours a day at hospice. The bills, the insurance forms, the correspondence. I was drowning. So I let Kristen take the mail. She set up forwarding to her address. "Temporary," she said, "just while Dad's in treatment." The bank statements stopped arriving. Insurance notices went to Kristen. I noticed, but I told myself she was helping. She was my daughter. What I did not know then, what I would not learn for months, was that Todd's last 2 real estate development projects had lost $200,000 each. Their mortgage was adjustable rate. Their credit cards were maxed. Kristen's boutique business had folded 18 months earlier. They were house rich and cash desperate. One afternoon at hospice, I stepped out to refill my coffee. When I came back, Kristen was sitting beside Frank's bed, leaning in close. I heard her ask, "Dad, where are the account passwords? Mom shouldn't have to deal with that right now." Frank stared at her. He did not blink. He did not answer. When Kristen left, Frank turned to me. His voice was thin by then, barely above a whisper. He said, "Daff, promise me something. Whatever happens, do not let go of the brown suit." I thought the medication was talking again. "Promise me." "I promise, Frank." He closed his eyes, and I added it to the list of things I did not understand yet. Todd Pryor married my daughter 12 years ago. He was a real estate attorney, tall, firm handshake, the kind of man who wore cufflinks to a backyard barbecue and called it Casual Friday. I never warmed to him. Frank tolerated him because Frank tolerated everyone, but he once told me after a Thanksgiving dinner, "That man sees our family like a balance sheet, Daff, assets and liabilities." Todd had been mentioning the lake house at every family gathering for years. He would pour himself a glass of wine, lean against the kitchen counter, and say something like, "That Catskills property is sitting on $720,000 of untapped value, Daphne. Just saying. Just saying." As if $720,000 were a casual observation about the weather. After Frank's diagnosis, Todd's comments shifted from casual to strategic. He brought brochures for senior living communities to our house. Not for Frank, for me. "Just to have options, Mom. You'll want to think about this eventually." I was 67 years old, in perfect health, still driving, still cooking, still balancing my own checkbook, and my son-in-law was showing me retirement brochures while my husband was still breathing. Then I found out about the appraisal. My neighbor, Mrs. Brennan, mentioned it in passing at the post office. "Daphne, I saw a man from Todd's firm at your lake house last week. He had a clipboard and a camera." Todd had arranged a property appraisal without telling me, without telling Frank. I said nothing. I filed it. Todd never called me Mom with warmth. He called me Mom the way you might call a parking meter buddy when it has expired. Technically friendly, functionally dismissive. Frank was still alive when the vultures started circling. They just had the decency to wait until visiting hours were over. Frank died on a Wednesday morning in March. Quietly. I was holding his hand. The heart monitor flattened and the room went still, and I sat there for 11 minutes before I told the nurse. I needed those 11 minutes. They were the last ones that belonged to just us. The funeral was Saturday. Small church on Main Street in Millbrook. 80 people. White lilies and hymns, and a pastor who had known Frank for 30 years. Frank was buried in his blue suit, the one he wore to church. The brown suit was for living, not for dying. I brought it with me to the reception in a garment bag because Frank had made me promise never to let it go. I had been carrying it around the house for days, honoring that promise without understanding why. Frank told me not to let it go, so I did not. The reception was in the church hall. Casseroles, coffee, neighbors speaking in low voices. And then my daughter walked up to me. Kristen had been composed all morning. Hair done, black dress, appropriate tears at appropriate moments. She touched my arm and nodded at the garment bag. "Mom, you need to let go of Dad's things, starting with that suit." I looked at her. It's just cluttering the closet, Mom. Donate it. Dad wouldn't want you hoarding things. My husband had been in the ground for 4 hours, and my daughter was decluttering his memory. I said nothing. I unzipped the garment bag. I folded the brown suit carefully. Lapels aligned, sleeves tucked. I walked through the reception hall, past 80 people holding paper plates, past the pastor, past Pam Lowell, who was patting Kristen's shoulder and murmuring, "You're so good to think of your mother's well-being." I set the suit on the passenger seat of my car. I closed the door. Across the parking lot, Todd gave Kristen a small nod. I went back inside because that is what you do. You go back inside and you drink weak coffee and you let people tell you how wonderful your husband was, as if you did not already know. I stood by the window with a cup I never drank from and watched the room. You learn things in the ER about reading a space. Who is talking to whom? Who is avoiding whom? Where the tension lives. Todd was in the corner with Kristen's uncle talking about the properties. I could not hear the words, but I recognized the posture. Elbows on knees, leaning in, the body language of a pitch. Kristen circulated the room, collecting sympathy and checking her phone every 3 minutes. She was not grieving. She was managing. Pam Lowell cornered me near the dessert table. 63 years old, highlighted hair, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "How are you sleeping, hon? Are you remembering to eat?" "I'm fine, Pam. I've been feeding myself for 68 years. She laughed. It sounded like crumpling tissue paper. Caleb arrived late. He had driven 4 hours from his veterinary practice in Burlington, Vermont. He hugged me and held on 3 seconds longer than usual. He looked at my face and asked quietly, "Mom, you okay?" "I will be." Mrs. Brennan whispered to me on her way out, "I saw another man from Todd's office at the lake house yesterday, Daphne, this time with a measuring tape. I filed that too. I drove home alone that night. The brown suit rode shotgun, and I talked to it the whole way home. I told Frank about the reception, about the casseroles, about the way our daughter looked at his suit like it was trash day. He did not answer, but I swear the passenger seat felt warmer. 1 week after the funeral, I walked to my mailbox. Empty. It had been empty for 3 days straight. I called the post office. A clerk named Dennis checked the system and said, "Mrs. Ingram, your mail forwarding was changed to a Kristen Pryor at 412 Maple Court, effective 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. Frank was still alive 6 weeks ago. My daughter had redirected my mail while my husband was still in hospice. Not after the funeral, not during, before." I drove to the Millbrook Public Library. My home internet was down. Kristen had offered to update the service, but it had been offline for 2 weeks with no resolution. At the library, I logged into my bank account. 3 transfers I did not authorize. $500 on February 9th, $800 on February 22nd, $350 on March 1st, all to an account number I did not recognize. Total, $1,650. Small amounts, not enough to trigger fraud alerts, just enough to test the water. I printed the statements. I put them in my purse. I drove home. I did not call Kristen. I did not call Todd. I did not cry. 35 years in the ER taught me one thing that applies to everything in life. You do not announce the diagnosis until you have all the labs back. You do not tell the family the news until you are certain of what you are dealing with. Panic helps no one. Procedure saves everyone. I was not panicking. I was in procedure mode. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and the brown suit hanging on the bedroom door where I could see it. I said out loud, "Frank, I think you were right about everything." The house was quiet, but it was not empty. Pam Lowell had been part of our lives for 20 years. Her husband Gerald and Frank used to play golf every other Saturday. When Gerald left Pam for a 29-year-old dental hygienist 5 years ago, I was the one who brought her soup and sat with her while she cried. After the funeral, Pam started visiting me twice a week. She brought casseroles and questions. "Do you remember what day it is, Daph? Did you take your medication today? Have you been forgetting things lately?" The questions were odd, pointed. They had the shape of a checklist, not a conversation. I answered simply at first, then I decided to test something. Pam, I remember every patient I ever coded in 35 years. I remember every birthday, every anniversary, every medication dosage I ever calculated at 3 a.m. And I remember where you left your reading glasses last Tuesday. They were on the windowsill by the kitchen sink. She laughed and changed the subject. But when she left, I watched from the living room window. She sat in her car for 4 minutes, texting. I ran a small experiment the next day. I called Pam and mentioned casually that I could not find my car keys that morning. I looked everywhere. Took me 20 minutes. Within 1 hour, Kristen called. "Mom, are you having trouble keeping track of things? Pam mentioned you lost your keys." Confirmation. Pam was reporting to Kristen. Every visit, every question, every casserole was a surveillance mission. I had seen this before. In the ER, we called it a coordinated family assessment, when relatives gather data to determine a patient's capacity. Except we did it to help patients. Kristen was doing it to build a case. I just did not know what kind of case. Not yet. 2 weeks after the funeral, Kristen showed up with brochures, glossy ones. Pinewood Senior Residences, where comfort meets community. The photos showed silver-haired people doing yoga on manicured lawns. "Mom, this house is too big for one person. 4 bedrooms? You'll rattle around in here." "I've lived in this house for 38 years, Kristen. Your father built that back deck with his own hands. Your height marks are still on the kitchen door frame." "That's exactly what I mean, Mom. You're living in the past." Living in the past. My husband had been dead for 2 weeks. Kristen laid out her plan. Sell the house. $480,000. Use the proceeds for the senior community. Monthly rent, $4,200. "Todd knows the market. He can manage the sale. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." There it was again. You would not have to worry. "Let me handle it, Mom." Every sentence a velvet glove over a fist. I told her I would think about it. She hugged me. The kind of hug where her arms went around me, but her body leaned away. Then she left. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. I am a nurse. We make lists. We chart. Mail forwarding. Changed to Kristen's address 6 weeks before Frank died. Unauthorized bank transfers. $1,650 moved to unknown account. Property appraisal. Arranged by Todd without consent. Pam's questions. Structured like a capacity assessment. Doctor appointment. Something Dr. Peterson's office had mentioned in a voicemail I had not returned yet. 5 items on the list. None of them added up to anything I wanted to believe, but all of them pointed in the same direction. I looked at the brown suit hanging on the bedroom door. "Frank, what did you know?" The next morning, I returned Dr. Peterson's voicemail. His receptionist answered. "Mrs. Ingram, we're calling to confirm your cognitive assessment screening scheduled for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. I didn't schedule a cognitive assessment. Pause. Keyboard clicking. Your daughter called it in. She said you've been experiencing confusion and memory lapses. She provided a list of specific incidents. My blood went cold. My voice did not. Cancel the appointment, please, and note in my file that I did not authorize this referral. I will be calling Dr. Peterson directly." "Yes, ma'am." I hung up. I sat in the kitchen for exactly 4 minutes staring at the wall. Then I picked up the phone again and called Caleb. I did not tell him everything, not yet. I needed more pieces before I could show him the whole picture. "Caleb, has Kristen said anything to you about my health?" He hesitated. "She mentioned you seemed a little forgetful after the funeral. But Mom, that's normal grief, right?" "Right, that is exactly what it is." "You'd tell me if something was wrong?" "I would." He believed me because I had never lied to him. That is the advantage of spending 68 years telling the truth. When you need people to trust you, the account is full. That night, I pulled out a spiral notebook, blue cover, college ruled. I wrote the date at the top and started a timeline. Every event, every date, every name, every conversation. Who said what, when, where. I did not know what they were building toward. Not yet. But I had spent 35 years reading vitals and recognizing when a patient was coding before the monitor beeped. My family was crashing, and they were trying to take me down with them. The following Sunday, I accepted Kristen's invitation to dinner. Todd grilled steaks. Kristen served a salad she called rustic. Pam was there too, the 4th chair, always. The conversation was careful for the first 20 minutes. Weather, Kristen's garden project, Todd's opinion on the town council. Then the table shifted. Todd set down his fork. "Daphne, I've been looking into some options for you, estate-wise." Options. Durable power of attorney. Conservatorship considerations. Nothing dramatic, just protection, in case something happens. "Nothing is happening to me, Todd." He smiled the way you smile at a child who does not understand the question. "Of course not, but your doctor might think differently." The room went cold. Kristen studied her plate. Pam nodded as if Todd had said something wise. Your doctor might think differently. The doctor appointment, the memory questions, the financial help, the mail forwarding, the unauthorized transfers, every thread tied to one knot. Conservatorship. They were building a petition to have me declared unable to manage my own life. My daughter, my son-in-law, my friend. Todd looked at me the way he looks at a zoning variance. Something to be approved, processed, filed away. I was not his mother-in-law sitting at his dinner table. I was a parcel of land with a deed that needed transferring. I finished my salad, I complimented the dressing, I said goodnight. At home, I walked straight to the bedroom closet. I pressed my face into the lapel of the brown suit, cedar, Old Spice. 43 years. "Frank, what do I do?" The suit did not answer, but the letter inside it, the one I did not know about yet, already had the answer waiting. Caleb drove down from Vermont the following weekend, 4 hours each way. He said he wanted to help sort Frank's things, but I think he needed to be in his father's house. Grief pulls people back to the rooms where the memories live. We spent Saturday in Frank's workshop, his tools hung on pegboard, each outlined in marker so you knew where it belonged. His files were in a metal cabinet, alphabetized, receipts from 1998, warranty cards for appliances we no longer owned. Frank kept everything. Caleb held up a wrench and laughed. Dad labeled this kitchen sink wrench. He had a dedicated wrench for the kitchen sink. He had a dedicated everything for everything. We boxed the workshop items, some for Caleb, some for donation, some for the metal cabinet to sit untouched because neither of us was ready. Over coffee on the back deck, Caleb said, "Mom, Kristen called me last week. She said you forgot to turn off the stove twice." I forgot once, 3 weeks ago. I was reading a letter from the hospice and the timer went off and I walked in circles for 10 seconds. That is not dementia, Caleb. That is Tuesday. He laughed, but there was worry behind his eyes, and I could see Kristen's words sitting in his head like seeds. I almost told him everything. The mail, the transfers, the doctor appointment, Todd's dinner table speech about conservatorship. But I stopped myself. Not yet. I needed the whole picture before I pulled anyone else into it. Instead, I said, "Your father was the most deliberate man I ever knew. He never left anything to chance. Remember that?" Caleb nodded. He did not understand yet, but he would. Sunday morning, Caleb helped me move some of Frank's clothes into storage boxes. The task was quieter than the workshop. Clothes carry a man's shape. You can fold a shirt and still see the shoulders. Most items went into donation bags. Frank would have approved. He hated waste. But I kept certain things. His watch, the tie he wore to our wedding, and the brown suit. Caleb lifted the suit off the hanger to fold it properly. He stopped. "Mom, did Dad keep something in the pockets? This thing weighs more than my lab coat." I walked over and felt the fabric. He was right. The suit had a heft to it that I had not noticed before. Or maybe I had noticed and attributed it to the wool. "Just hang it back up, honey. That suit is not going anywhere." Caleb did, but he gave it a second look. The kind of look he gives an animal at his clinic when something does not add up on the chart. That night, I went to bed early. Caleb stayed up in the living room reading a biography of Teddy Roosevelt he had found on Frank's shelf. Sometime past midnight, I learned this later, Caleb could not sleep. He went back to the closet. He lifted the suit again, ran his hand along the interior lining. Near the inside breast pocket, he felt something stiff, not fabric, something flat with edges. He found a seam ripper in Frank's workshop kit and carefully opened 3 inches of the seam. He reached inside. At 6:07 a.m. Monday morning, my phone rang, Caleb's name on the screen, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "Mom, what was sewn into the lining of that jacket?" My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you find?" "You need to come see this." I drove to the motel on Route 44 where Caleb was staying. 7 minutes. I did not remember a single traffic light. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with the brown suit spread across his lap. The lining was open. He had used a seam ripper from Frank's workshop, careful as a surgeon. Inside, the wool was parted like a wound. 2 items lay on the bedspread. A sealed envelope, cream-colored, Frank's handwriting across the front. "For Daphne, open with our boy," and a small brass key wrapped in a square of cloth. My hands trembled. This was the first time in this entire story. The first time since Frank's diagnosis, since the funeral, since the mail and the transfers and the doctor appointment, that my body betrayed what my mind was holding. I am an ER nurse. I do not shake. But I shook. Caleb watched me. "Mom, I didn't open the letter. It's addressed to you." I sat beside him, picked up the envelope, broke the seal. Frank's handwriting, cramped and uneven, written from a hospice bed, but unmistakably his. Every letter slanted right, the way it always did. "Daph, if you're reading this, I'm gone and they've started. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was still breathing. I was afraid you'd confront Kristen and she'd move faster." I stopped reading. Caleb put his hand on my shoulder. I continued. "I moved $340,000 into a trust. Only your name. Whitfield has the documents. This key opens box 714 at First National. Everything you need is inside." The suit was the only safe place. Kristen never touched it. She always hated this suit. The words hit like a closed fist. My daughter wanted me to donate it at the funeral, and my husband had turned it into the only safe in the house she would never look inside. "It's just cluttering the closet, Mom." That is what Kristen said. The clutter was $340,000 and the truth. Caleb read over my shoulder. His face was gray. "Dad knew about all of it?" I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, held the brass key in my palm. It was small, warm from the wool. "He knew, Caleb, and he spent his last weeks making sure I would be okay." I read the rest of Frank's letter at the motel. Caleb sat beside me, silent. In the months before hospice, when he was still mobile enough to drive, Frank had noticed Kristen accessing their bank statements online. She had guessed the password. It was Caleb's birthday, the same password Frank used for everything. He changed it. She called Todd. Todd had approached Frank directly, 6 months before he died, about signing the lake house over to a family trust for tax purposes. Frank asked who the trustees would be. Todd said himself and Kristen. Frank said no. Then came the line that carved itself into my chest. "I overheard a phone call, Daph. Kristen was talking to Todd in the hospice hallway. She thought I was asleep. She said once Dad's gone, Mom won't fight it. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her." "Once Dad is gone, Mom will not fight it." Frank contacted Mr. Whitfield the next week, set up an irrevocable trust, moved the money in 3 transfers over 6 months. $120,000, $110,000, $110,000. Time to avoid triggering joint account alerts. The man was an engineer. He planned it like a bridge. He asked Roy Beckett to come to hospice with his tailoring kit. Roy sewed the letter and the key into the lining of the brown suit. "I chose the brown suit because it's the one thing you'd never give away, Daph. You know what it means." They don't. He was right. Kristen saw clutter. I saw every Saturday morning, every birthday, every airport pickup, every important day we ever had. I folded the letter and placed it in my purse. Frank fought for me while he was dying. The cancer was eating him alive, and he was on the phone with his lawyer and his tailor, building me a life raft. The least I could do was fight for myself now that he was gone. Tuesday morning, Caleb and I drove to First National Bank on Main Street. I wore my good coat and my nursing pin. I do not know why I wore the pin. Maybe I needed Frank's world to see that I was still somebody who mattered. Helen Park, the branch manager, recognized me immediately. Mrs. Ingram, your husband was here about 6 months ago. He told me you'd be coming eventually. He said I'd know when because you'd have the key. I held up the brass key. Helen nodded. Box 714. A small steel drawer in a vault that smelled like old paper and cold metal. The key fit perfectly. Inside, trust documents. An irrevocable trust naming Daphne Ingram as sole beneficiary of $340,000, administered by Mr. Whitfield's firm. Kristen and Todd had no access, no claim, no ability to contest. A revised will, drafted 4 months before Frank's death, superseding the original. The main house went to me. The lake house went to Caleb. Kristen received $10,000, earmarked with a note in Frank's handwriting, for her demonstrated interest in managing family finances, and 47 pages of printed emails. Kristen to Todd, Todd to Kristen, Kristen to Pam, Todd to a paralegal named Stevens. Subject lines that read like a conspiracy. Mom's cognitive status. POA timeline. Whitfield won't help. Find another attorney. Property valuation attached. 47 pages. I held the stack. My hands were steady this time. Caleb's were not. 47 pages, I said. That is how much planning it takes to steal your mother's life. Caleb did not speak for a long time. When he did, his voice was thin. What do? We call Whitfield. The brass key sat in my coat pocket, still warm. It had opened more than a box. The bank had a private conference room. Helen let us use it. Caleb and I sat across from each other with 47 pages between us and read. I will not recite every email, but I will give you the ones that still keep me up at night. Todd to Kristen, January 14th. Once we have the POA, we petition for conservatorship within 90 days. The lake house sale covers our debts with $400,000 left over. We'll list it before summer. Kristen to Pam, February 3rd. Keep visiting her. Write down anything she forgets, even small things. We need documentation, dates and specifics. Pam to Kristen, February 18th. She forgot where she put her reading glasses today. I'll add it to the notes. Also, she repeated a story about Frank's retirement party. That's twice in 1 week. She repeated a story about her dead husband's retirement party. Twice in 1 week. And Pam filed it as evidence of cognitive decline. Todd to Kristen, March 5th. 3 days after Frank's funeral. Your mother is 68. Judges see a widow that age and they lean toward protection. We just need the medical eval to get the ball rolling. The medical evaluation. The cognitive assessment Kristen scheduled without my knowledge. Step 1 in a conservatorship petition I was never supposed to see coming. Caleb put the papers down. His hands were flat on the table. I feel sick. Don't. I gathered the pages and straightened them into a clean stack. We don't have time for sick. We have time for action. I placed the emails in a folder. I placed the folder in my purse beside Frank's letter. We walked out of the bank into sunlight that felt too bright for what we now knew. I called Mr. Whitfield's office from the bank parking lot. His secretary said he was expecting my call. He's been expecting it for 4 months, Mrs. Ingram. Come in whenever you're ready. Caleb and I drove there directly. Whitfield's office was in a brick building on Elm Street. Old, solid, the kind of building that looks like it has handled serious things for serious people. Whitfield was 61, silver hair, reading glasses. He shook my hand and said, "Your husband was a remarkable man, Mrs. Ingram. I'm learning that." He opened a sealed envelope, Frank's handwriting on the front, dated 4 months before his death. Inside, a single typed page with Frank's signature. When Daphne comes to you with the contents of Box 714, proceed as follows. Whitfield read the instructions aloud. Frank had laid out everything. The trust was ironclad. The revised will was properly witnessed and notarized. Todd's involvement, as both a family member and an attorney, drafting conservatorship paperwork for his own mother-in-law while planning to profit from her property, was a textbook conflict of interest, reportable to the New York State Bar. Whitfield looked at me over his glasses. Your husband was a very thorough man. He was an engineer. They build things to last. Caleb squeezed my hand under the table. Now, if you are watching this and thinking about your own estate plan or your own mother's, pause this video, call them, ask if they feel safe, ask who has access to their accounts. Sometimes the people sitting at your kitchen table are the ones you need the most protection from. Hit subscribe if this hit close to home. I will wait. Where was I? Right. Whitfield's office. The plan was coming together. The following week, I did not confront anyone. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I organized. Monday. I called Dr. Peterson and scheduled my own cognitive assessment. Voluntary. I drove to his office, sat in a plastic chair, and answered every question they put in front of me. Date of birth, current president, count backward from 100 by sevens, draw a clock face, name 3 items from a list given 10 minutes earlier. I scored in the 95th percentile for my age group. Dr. Peterson wrote in his notes, patient demonstrates excellent cognitive function, no evidence of impairment. Tuesday. I called my former colleague, Janet Morales, a charge nurse I worked beside for 22 years. I asked her to write a letter attesting to my cognitive sharpness. She laughed and said, Daphne, I watched you manage a 10-car pileup triage when you were 62. Your mind is a vault. I'll have the letter to you by Thursday. Wednesday. I compiled my file, bank records, mail forwarding documentation from the post office, the canceled doctor appointment notation, screenshots of Pam's text timestamps matched to Kristen's subsequent calls, and the 47 pages of emails. Thursday. I took the brown suit to Henderson's dry cleaning on Route 44. I asked them to professionally re-sew the lining where Caleb had opened it. The woman behind the counter held the suit and said, "This is beautiful wool. They don't make them like this anymore." "No," I said, "they don't." I hung the suit back in the closet that evening. It looked different now. Not just a memory, not just cedar and Old Spice. It was armor. I did not cry that week. I organized. Frank would have approved. Kristen and Pam showed up unannounced the following Saturday. They brought oatmeal cookies and concerned faces. "Surprise visit, Mom. We thought we'd check on you." "Come in. I'll put the kettle on." I made tea. I offered them cookies from their own tin. I sat in Frank's armchair, the one with the worn left arm, and waited. Pam opened the conversation. "How's your sleeping, Daph? Kristen says you've been up at odd hours." "I've always been up at odd hours. 35 years of night shifts will do that to a person." Kristen walked through the house while Pam talked. I could hear her opening the bathroom cabinet, checking the kitchen counter, looking for ammunition, pill bottles out of order, expired food, unpaid bills left in a stack. She would find nothing. I had scrubbed the house that week until it gleamed, every surface organized, every bill filed, the refrigerator stocked and labeled. Kristen came back to the living room. Her face was tight. "Mom, Todd, and I have been talking. We really think you should meet with a financial advisor, someone who can help you manage the accounts." "I'll consider it." She waited for more. I gave her nothing. After they left, I stood at the living room window and watched. Kristen was on the phone in the driveway, pacing, gesturing, frustrated. I could not hear the words, but I could read the body language from 30 feet away. She was not getting the results she expected. I smiled. 35 years of reading patients in crisis taught me exactly when someone's plan is falling apart. The tells are the same whether you are in a hospital or a driveway. Agitation, repetitive gestures. The phone pressed hard against the ear. Kristen's plan was showing cracks. Mine was not. 3 days later, Todd called me directly. First time he had ever called without Kristen on the line or in the room. "Daphne, I've prepared a durable power of attorney document. It's standard. It just gives Kristen legal authority to manage your accounts in case something happens." In case. When? I mean, as a precaution. "Send me the document, Todd. I'll have my own attorney review it." Dead silence. I could hear him recalculating. "You have an attorney?" "I've had an attorney since before you married my daughter." Another silence, longer this time. Todd's voice dropped half an octave. The friendly son-in-law veneer evaporated. "Daphne, this is for your protection. If you fight this, it gets harder for everyone." "I appreciate your concern, Todd. I'll be in touch." I hung up. My hand was steady. My coffee was still warm. Todd's mistake was a common one. He looked at me and saw a 68-year-old widow in a bathrobe rattling around a 4-bedroom house, easy to manage. He saw a target demographic, elderly, grieving, female alone. What he did not see was 35 years of making life and death decisions in rooms louder than anything he had ever survived. He did not see the woman who had intubated a man twice her size during a code blue at 3 a.m. with 2 nurses out sick and a power outage in the East Wing. He did not see the woman who had delivered the worst news a family can receive. Your loved one is gone. 412 times and never once lost her composure. Silence is not weakness. Silence is triage. You assess, you plan, you act, and you do not warn the patient before the needle. Todd was about to feel the needle. I waited 2 days. Then I called Kristen. My voice was calm, warm even. The voice of a mother who has thought things over. Honey, I've thought about what Todd said, and I think a family meeting would be a good idea. Kristen was surprised. I could hear it in the half-second delay before she responded. Really, Mom? That's great. I'm glad. I want everyone there. You, Todd, and Pam. Since she's been so involved in my well-being, I'd like to hold the meeting at Mr. Whitfield's office. He was your father's lawyer, after all. It feels right to do it there. Hesitation. Whitfield? Why not just at our house? Because I want everything proper, Kristen. Your father would have wanted that. She could not argue with a dead man's wishes. She agreed. In the background, I heard Todd's voice, muffled but distinct. This is good. She's cooperating. Cooperating. Like a suspect. Like a patient who has finally accepted the treatment plan. I hung up and walked to the bedroom closet. The brown suit hung between Frank's old flannel shirts and a windbreaker he wore to Caleb's Little League games. Frank, you would have loved this part. I spent the rest of that evening preparing. I laid out my clothes for the meeting. Not the black funeral dress, not the bathrobe Todd imagined me living in. Slacks, a clean ivory blouse, my nursing pin on the collar, the one with 25 years engraved on the back. I ironed the blouse twice. I polished the pin with a soft cloth. In the morning, I would fold the brown suit into a garment bag and drive it to the meeting. The suit had one more job to do. The day before the meeting, I sat in Whitfield's office for the final preparation. Caleb was beside me. Whitfield had reviewed everything. The trust documents, the revised will, the 47 pages of emails, the bank transfer records, the mail forwarding confirmation, Dr. Peterson's cognitive assessment, and Nurse Janet's letter. He summarized his assessment in the steady, measured tone of a man who had been practicing law for 36 years. Todd Pryor, as a licensed attorney, participated in drafting conservatorship paperwork for his own mother-in-law while simultaneously planning to profit from the sale of her property. That is a textbook conflict of interest. The New York State Bar Association will take this very seriously. He continued, the emails document a coordinated effort to manufacture evidence of cognitive decline in a competent adult. Under New York elder law, that constitutes a pattern consistent with financial exploitation of a vulnerable elderly person. The irrevocable trust cannot be contested. The revised will supersedes the original. As of the moment we present this documentation, Kristen's financial access to your accounts and assets is terminated. He paused, removed his glasses. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Ingram? She's your daughter. I looked at the folder on his desk, 47 pages of emails, $1,650 in unauthorized transfers, a doctor appointment I never made, a lifetime of trust converted into a conservatorship petition. She stopped being my daughter the day she started being my conservator. Whitfield nodded. He did not argue. Caleb would be at the meeting. Roy Beckett had provided a written statement confirming Frank's request at hospice. Dr. Peterson's report would be on the table. Every piece accounted for. One more thing, I said. I'm bringing the suit. Whitfield raised an eyebrow. The brown one? It started this. It should be there when it ends. The morning of the meeting, Thursday, May 15th, clear sky, 62 degrees. I dressed carefully. The slacks were pressed. The ivory blouse was crisp. The nursing pin caught the bathroom light when I turned to check the mirror. 25 years of service reduced to a small gold circle, but it carried the weight of every shift, every code, every family I had helped through the worst night of their lives. I opened the closet. The brown suit hung where it always hung. I lifted it off the rod and folded it. Lapels aligned, sleeves tucked, the way I had folded it at the funeral reception. I placed it in the garment bag. Downstairs, I made coffee, drank half a cup, washed the mug, set it on the drying rack. I placed the garment bag in the back seat of my car. The folder of evidence was in my purse. Frank's letter was in my coat pocket. The brass key was in a small pouch, zipped and secure. I drove to Whitfield's office. The morning light was sharp on Elm Street. The brick building looked solid and patient, the way good buildings do. Caleb was already there. He hugged me in the parking lot. "You ready, Mom?" I adjusted my nursing pin. I've been ready since the funeral. We walked inside. Whitfield had arranged the conference room. Oak table, 6 chairs, water glasses. The folder of evidence sat in the center of the table like a centerpiece no one had ordered. We waited. I sat in one of the leather chairs and thought about Frank. His hands, the way they were always doing something. Tightening a bolt, adjusting a measurement, building something that would outlast him. He built the back deck in 2 summers. He rebuilt the lake house dock 3 times because the first 2 were not level enough for his standards. He rewired the kitchen outlets himself because the electrician took shortcuts. Frank never cut corners, not on a project, not on a marriage, and not, it turned out, on protecting me. I thought about the suit, how it traveled from a shop on State Street in Albany in 1986 to a proposal on one knee to a hospice room where a dying man asked his best friend to sew a letter and a key into its lining because his own daughter could not be trusted. Frank did not write me a love letter. He wrote me a shield. The door to the conference room opened at 2:03 p.m. Todd walked in first. Blue suit, briefcase. The smile of a man who believed he was about to close a deal. Behind him, Kristen. Pale pink blouse, hair pulled back, eyes that darted to the folder on the table and then away. Pam entered last, scarf, purse clutched with both hands. The expression of someone who had agreed to attend a meeting she was no longer sure she wanted to be at. Todd pulled out a chair, sat down, crossed his legs. "Afternoon, Daphne. Glad we could do this like adults." I looked at him. I folded my hands on the table. I said nothing. The conference room held all of us now, 6 people around an oak table, water glasses sweating, the clock on the wall ticking like it was keeping score. Todd opened his briefcase and produced a document, 3 pages stapled with yellow tabs marking the signature lines. He slid it across the table toward me. "We can get this signed today, Daphne, and everyone goes home happy. Durable power of attorney. Kristen as your designated agent. Clean and simple." I did not touch the document. I did not look at it. Whitfield spoke. His voice was the kind that fills a room without raising. "Before we proceed with any documents, Mr. Pryor, there are some matters that Mr. Frank Ingram asked me to address upon certain conditions being met." Todd's smile thinned. "What conditions? What matters?" Mr. Ingram left sealed instructions with this firm to be opened when Mrs. Ingram presented specific materials. Those conditions were met 4 days ago. Kristen shifted in her chair. The leather creaked. Pam adjusted her scarf, crossed her ankles, uncrossed them. Todd leaned back. "I was not aware of any sealed instructions." "You were not meant to be, Mr. Pryor." Whitfield opened a folder. He placed his reading glasses on his nose. "I'll begin with Mr. Ingram's letter." The room drew a breath. I could feel it. All 6 of us inhaling at once, the way a room does when it senses that something is about to break open and cannot be put back. Whitfield read Frank's letter aloud, every word, the hospice handwriting made human by a lawyer's steady voice. The part about Kristen accessing the bank accounts, the part about Todd's proposal to transfer the lake house, the part about moving $340,000 into a trust, and then the line that stopped the room. "I am writing this from a hospital bed because I cannot trust my own daughter to protect my wife." Kristen's face drained of color, not slowly, all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. Todd's jaw tightened. His hand moved, instinctively, toward the POA document on the table, as if he could slide it away before anyone noticed. Pam's eyes went to the door, measuring the distance. Whitfield continued reading. The phone call Frank overheard in the hospice hallway. Kristen's voice. Once Dad's gone, Mom won't fight it. The instructions to Whitfield, the safe deposit box, the trust. When Whitfield finished, the room was silent. Not the comfortable silence of people thinking, the airless silence of people caught. I spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Your father knew. 3 words. They landed on the table between us like something dropped from a height. Kristen flinched as if I had struck her. Mom, her voice cracked. That's not... He was on medication. He wasn't thinking clearly when he wrote that. Whitfield removed his glasses. Mr. Ingram was of sound mind at the time these documents were drafted and executed. His attending physician certified his cognitive capacity on the same date. The documents are legally binding. Kristen opened her mouth, closed it. Todd's fingers were white around his pen. The brown suit hung in its garment bag on the back of my chair. Silent witness. Whitfield placed the stack of printed emails on the table. 47 pages. He squared the edges with his palms and centered them like a man who understood the weight of what he was handling. These were found in Mr. Ingram's safe deposit box. They document correspondence between Mrs. Kristen Pryor, Mr. Todd Pryor, and Ms. Pamela Lowell regarding a conservatorship petition over Mrs. Daphne Ingram. He read the key excerpts. Todd's January email about the property sale and the $400,000 profit. Kristen's instructions to Pam about documenting Daphne's forgetfulness. The timeline for the petition. The search for a different attorney after Whitfield refused to help. Todd slammed his palm on the table. The water glasses trembled. Those are private communications. You cannot use those in any legal proceeding. This is a violation of... These are your emails, Mr. Pryor, printed from accounts your father-in-law accessed through shared family devices, and this is not a courtroom. Whitfield's voice did not rise. This is a family meeting. You requested one. Todd stood, his chair scraped the floor. This is entrapment. This is... Sit down, Mr. Pryor. Todd did not sit down, but he stopped talking. Pam was clutching her purse against her chest, half risen from her chair. Her face had gone the color of old paper. I didn't. I was just trying to help Kristen. I didn't know it was going to go this far. Caleb spoke for the first time. Quiet. Firm. His father's voice coming through his son's mouth. Sit down, Pam. Pam sat. The 47 pages lay in the center of the table. Every scheme, every dollar figure, every lie typed and time-stamped and printed in black and white. There was nowhere left to hide. Kristen was crying. Not the composed tears from the funeral. Real crying. The kind that bends your body forward and makes your shoulders shake. Todd was pacing the length of the conference room. 4 steps to the window, 4 steps back. His briefcase sat open on the table. The unsigned POA document looking absurd now, like a prop from a play that had been canceled. Kristen turned to me. Her mascara was running. Her voice was raw. Mom, I was scared. After Dad got sick, I panicked. Todd said we were going to lose the house. Our house. The kids' school tuition. Everything. I didn't know what to do. For 1 second. 1 single second. I saw my daughter. Not the woman who redirected my mail and scheduled cognitive assessments behind my back. The girl who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms and press her face against my neck because she said I smelled like safety. Then she finished. But you can't manage this alone, Mom. You're 68. You need someone to handle... I managed a level 1 trauma center for 15 years, Kristen. My voice was quiet, not cold, not angry, just clear. I managed your father's hospice care for 18 months. I managed to raise 2 children while working 12-hour night shifts. I managed to keep this family fed and housed and educated on a nurse's salary when your father's firm went through layoffs in 2009. I paused. What I apparently could not manage was seeing what was right in front of me. Kristen flinched like I had slapped her. Todd stopped pacing. "We're done here. This is harassment. We'll see you in court." Whitfield did not look up from his notes. "Mr. Pryor, I would not recommend that." Whitfield opened the final section of his folder. His movements were precise, unhurried. The man had been waiting for this moment for 4 months and was not going to rush it. "I will now summarize the actions taken per Mr. Ingram's instructions and in accordance with Mrs. Ingram's wishes." He read each item like a judge reading a verdict. 1. An irrevocable trust of $340,000 has been established in the name of Daphne Ingram. It cannot be contested, modified, or accessed by any other party. Todd's jaw clenched. 2. A revised last will and testament, properly witnessed and notarized, supersedes the original. The Millbrook residence is bequeathed to Daphne Ingram. The Catskills Lake House is bequeathed to Caleb Ingram. Kristen Pryor receives the sum of $10,000. Kristen made a sound, not a word, a sound. 3. A formal complaint has been prepared for submission to the New York State Bar Association regarding Todd Pryor's conflict of interest in this matter. Todd grabbed his briefcase. "You can't do this!" Whitfield looked at him. "It is done, Mr. Pryor. It was done the day Mr. Ingram signed the trust." 4. Dr. Peterson's cognitive assessment of Mrs. Ingram, conducted voluntarily last week, shows she scored in the 95th percentile for her age group. His written conclusion: no evidence of impairment. Nurse Janet Morales has also provided a professional attestation. 5. All financial access previously granted to Kristen Pryor has been revoked as of 9 a.m. this morning. The room was still. Todd stood with his briefcase half closed, unable to move. Kristen stared at the table. Pam was pressing her back against her chair as if trying to disappear into it. Caleb reached under the table and held my hand. I held it back. Todd left first. He said nothing. He took his briefcase and his unsigned POA document and walked out. The door did not slam. He closed it carefully, the way people do when they are trying to maintain the illusion of control. Pam followed 30 seconds later. She mumbled something about not knowing it would go this far. She did not look at me. That left Kristen, still in her chair, still crying, her hands flat on the table. I stood. I reached behind my chair and lifted the garment bag. I could feel the weight of the brown suit through the fabric. Lighter now, its secrets delivered. I walked to the door, paused. I turned to Kristen. My voice was quiet. There was no anger in it, only truth. "Your father wore this suit the day he proposed to me. He wore it the day you graduated. He wore it the day he decided to protect me from you." I held her eyes. "It was never clutter, Kristen. It was the only thing in that closet that was looking out for me." I walked out. Caleb followed. The afternoon sun hit the parking lot hard and bright. I did not look back. I did not need to. Everything I needed was already in my hands. Here is what happened after. Todd Pryor was reported to the New York State Bar Association. The investigation opened within 2 weeks. His firm, a mid-size outfit in Albany, placed him on administrative leave pending the outcome. 2 of his other clients pulled their cases when word circulated. A conflict of interest in a conservatorship case involving your own mother-in-law is not the kind of publicity that inspires client confidence. Todd and Kristen separated 3 months later. I do not know the details, and I did not ask. What I know is that Todd moved to a rental apartment on the east side of town, and that Kristen kept the house, the one with the adjustable rate mortgage and the 4 bedrooms and the kitchen where she once served me brochures for a senior living community. Kristen did not speak to me for 6 weeks. Then she called. She did not apologize. She asked if I would pay for a therapist. The irony was not lost on me. Asking the woman you tried to declare incompetent to fund your recovery. But I thought about her 2 children, my grandchildren, growing up in whatever wreckage Todd and Kristen had made. I said yes, on one condition, that she go alone, without Todd in the room or on the phone coaching her. She agreed. It has been 4 months. We are not close. But Kristen texts me every Sunday evening. Short messages. "How are you, Mom?" I text back. "I'm fine." It is not much, but it is something. And sometimes something is where you start. Pam Lowell. Word traveled through our circle fast. Small towns digest scandal efficiently. 3 of her closest friends dropped her within a month. She moved to her sister's place in Stamford, Connecticut. She sent me a card. I did not open it. Maybe I will someday. Not yet. Caleb comes down from Vermont every other weekend now. He brings his golden retriever, a 2-year-old named Biscuit with enormous paws and no concept of personal space. Biscuit sleeps on Frank's side of the bed. I let him. The mattress does not dip the same way, but the warmth is close enough. The lake house is in Caleb's name now, but the first thing he said when we signed the papers was, "It's yours as long as you want it, Mom. I'm just holding it." I drive up to the lake once a month. I sit on the dock Frank rebuilt 3 times. I talk to him. I tell him about the garden, about Biscuit, about the way the light hits the water at 6 p.m. in July. He does not answer, but I keep talking. The brown suit hangs in my closet, clean, re-sewn, empty now. Its job is done. Sometimes I press my face against the lapel and I can still catch it. Cedar, Old Spice, 43 years. People will tell you that love ends at the cemetery gate, that once someone is gone, what they left behind is just clutter, fabric and buttons and thread. But Frank's love was sewn into a lining I almost gave away. And the people who tell you to let go of everything are sometimes the ones you need to hold on tightest against. That is my story. 1 brown suit, 1 letter, 1 brass key, and a husband who fought for me when he could not fight for himself. If this reminded you to check who has access to your accounts, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.